Mother-in-law, open the door. I came to have lunch with you all. The voice of Veronica sliced through the wood before I could take a breath. My son, Robert, instantly went pale. I saw him from the hallway, his hands trembling as he held the coffee cup I had just poured for him. He knew what she would see. The bruise on my face was still there, a dark purple mixed with sickly yellow, right under my left eye. 3 days earlier, I had fallen in the bathroom trying to reach the towels on the top shelf. That shelf Anthony always said was too high for me, but never lowered. Anthony had been dead for 2 years, and the shelf remained in the same spot, mocking my height every morning. I didn't have time to cover it with makeup. I didn't have time to invent a credible story. Robert got up from his chair as if the floor were opening beneath his feet, and walked toward the door with steps that dragged with guilt. I remained frozen in the middle of the living room, my apron still on, smelling of onion and tomato from the stew I had prepared just for him, just for my son, because Veronica never gave notice when she would come. The door opened. Veronica walked in with that confidence possessed by people who have never had to ask permission for anything. High heels, sounding like judgments against the hardwood floor, a designer purse dangling from her arm, expensive perfume filling the space and pushing the smell of my homemade food into the corners of the house. Her hair was pulled back into a perfect bun, red lipstick, impeccable nails. I, in my stained apron and my grey hair tied up with an old rubber band, felt like a shadow in my own home. Her eyes found me immediately. They stopped at the bruise like a hawk spotting movement in the grass. Robert tried to say something, his mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no sound came out. Veronica walked toward me with measured, calculated steps, and for a second I thought she would ask what had happened, that she would show even a sliver of concern. "You can sit down, get some rest." Her voice was sweet, almost maternal, but her eyes were cold as steel. She touched my shoulder with a soft hand and guided me toward the sofa as if I were a frail, elderly woman who needed assistance to walk 10 feet. Robert was still standing by the door, looking away, cowardly, always cowardly when it came to facing his wife. I sat down because my legs could no longer hold me, not from physical tiredness, but from that exhaustion of the soul that comes from years of being treated as if you are a problem someone has to solve. Veronica placed her purse on the armchair, that armchair that had been Anthony's, where he sat every night reading the newspaper with his half-moon glasses resting on the tip of his nose. She reached into her enormous bag, that bag where she always carried things whose purpose I didn't understand. Very expensive creams, leather planners, pens that cost more than my month's grocery shopping. I watched her with that mix of curiosity and terror you feel when you know something bad is coming, but you cannot look away. She pulled out a folded manila envelope, then another, then a clear folder with documents inside. She placed them on the coffee table carefully, as if they were cards in a game where she already knew all the hands. Robert finally moved, closing the door and walking toward us, but he stood behind the sofa, not daring to sit down, not daring to look me directly in the eye. "Grace, we need to talk about important things." Veronica sat down facing me, crossed her legs, and that simple gesture made me feel like I was in an office being interrogated by an executive who held all the decision-making power over my life. She opened the first envelope and took out photographs. Photographs of my house, of the outside, the neglected lawn, the broken shingles on the roof, the peeling paint on the facade. "Robert and I have been very worried about you." Worried. That word sounded as fake in her mouth as a $3 bill. She took one of the photographs and held it up in front of me, pointing out the cracks in the exterior walls with a perfectly painted dark red nail. "This house is falling apart, mother-in-law. Look at it. The roof is leaking, the windows don't close properly anymore. The yard looks like a jungle. It's not safe for you to live here alone, at your age, with your health. My health. As if she knew anything about my health. As if she had ever asked how I slept, if my back hurt, if my blood pressure pills were working. The last time Veronica asked anything about me was 2 years ago, at Anthony's funeral, when she needed to know where the life insurance papers were kept. I said nothing. I had learned that silence is sometimes the only defense you have when people have already decided what story they are going to tell about you, no matter what you say. I looked at the photographs, my house seen through the eyes of someone who only sees problems and expenses, not memories or history. We've been looking for options for you. Veronica pulled more papers out of the folder. Glossy brochures with photographs of modern buildings, perfectly manicured lawns, elderly people smiling falsely for the camera. Residences, nursing homes disguised as senior living communities, places where they send you when you are no longer useful, when you are in the way, when your own family decides it's more convenient to pay for a place for you than to visit you in your own. Robert finally spoke, his voice weak, almost apologetic. Mum, it's for your own good. We can't relax knowing you're here alone. What if you fall again and no one is around to help you? Fall again. As if my falls were a habit, a clumsy old lady's custom of not being able to stay on her feet. I touched the bruise instinctively and felt the dull pain throbbing under my fingers. I had fallen, yes, but I had gotten up alone, healed alone, and moved on alone, just as I had done for 2 years since Anthony closed his eyes for the last time in the bed we shared for 43 years. Veronica continued as if Robert hadn't spoken, as if his words were just a necessary echo of what she had already decided. We found a beautiful place, Grace. It has 24-hour nurses, recreational activities, and a dining hall with balanced menus. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. No cooking, no cleaning, no maintenance. Just rest and enjoy. Rest. Enjoy. As if life were about giving up, accepting that your time has passed and all that remains is to wait for the end in a room that smells of disinfectant and institutional food. I took one of the brochures with hands that trembled, not from age, but from contained fury. Vista Hermosa Residence. $500 a month just for the monthly fee, not counting medication or special care. $500 that they would not pay, of course. $500 that would come from the sale of my house, this house that Anthony and I bought when Robert was 3 years old. This house where every corner held a story, every stain on the wall was a memory, every creak of the floor was the voice of the years lived. And the house? My voice asked, barely a whisper, almost breathless. Veronica smiled. That smile that showed all her white, perfect teeth, that smile that didn't reach her eyes. We would sell it. Obviously. It makes no sense to keep this property empty, consuming taxes and utilities. With what we get from the sale, we would pay for your stay at Vista Hermosa for several years, and what's left over, we would keep for when you need more specialized care. We would keep what's left over. Not we would keep it for you. We would keep it. They would. As if the money from the sale of my life was already theirs. As if I were already dead, and all that was missing was the paperwork to bury the body. Robert was still silent, looking toward the window, anywhere but my face. Coward. My son had become a man who let his wife make all the decisions, move all the pieces, and dictate how his own mother should live. Veronica pulled out more papers, legal documents with small print and terms I didn't completely understand. Power of attorney, one said. Property transfer, another said. We just need you to sign here, Grace, and here, and here. They're formalities to speed up the process. so you don't have to worry about any legal or bureaucratic stuff. We'll take care of everything." She pushed an expensive pen toward me, one of those heavy pens that lawyers use to sign important things, life-changing things, things that can't be undone. The pen rested on the documents, like a snake waiting for the exact moment to strike. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. I stayed looking at those papers, those signatures, waiting to be completed, that life others had designed for me without even asking if it was what I wanted. The bruise on my face pulsed with every beat of my heart, reminding me that I was no longer young, no longer strong, that maybe they were right, and I was being stubborn out of pure pride. Veronica leaned forward, her perfume invading my space, her voice dropping to an almost conspiratorial tone. "Do it for Robert, mother-in-law. He doesn't sleep well thinking about you here alone. Give him that peace of mind. I know it's hard, but it's best for everyone." For everyone, not for me, for all of them. For all of... I did not sign that day. Veronica put the papers away with a tense smile, the kind people use when they fake patience but are boiling with frustration inside. Robert kissed my forehead before leaving, a quick, cold kiss that smelled of guilt, and then they disappeared out the door, leaving the smell of expensive perfume floating in my living room as a reminder that they had been there, invading, deciding, planning my future without me. I stayed sitting on the sofa until the daylight began to die outside the window. I didn't turn on the lamps. I liked the gloom, the way the shadows covered the old furniture and the peeling walls that bothered Veronica so much. In the darkness, my house was still beautiful. In the darkness, I could still hear Anthony's laughter from the kitchen. I could still see little Robert running down the hall with his toy cars. But the darkness didn't last forever. It never does. The following weeks were like living in a house that was no longer mine, even though my name was still on the deed. Veronica started coming more often, always with different excuses. She brought food because I looked too thin. She came to check the leaks in the roof. She was just passing by and decided to say hello. Soft lies wrapped in fake concern. Every time she came, she brought something with her. Not gifts, but changes. One day she arrived with a man who introduced himself as a contractor and began taking measurements of the rooms without my permission. Another day she brought a woman from a real estate agency who walked through my house with a tablet in her hand, taking photographs of every corner, assessing my life in square feet and market value. "Grace, we're just preparing the groundwork. When you decide to move, everything will be ready." When I decide, as if it were my decision, as if I had a choice. Robert came with her but spoke less and less. He had become a silent accessory to his wife, a man who winced when she spoke, who looked away when I searched his eyes, begging for help, begging him to remember who I was before I was just a problem to solve. One afternoon, Veronica arrived with boxes, folded cardboard boxes that she left in the hallway next to my bedroom door. "So you can start packing what you want to take to Vista Hermosa, mother-in-law. Space is limited there, so you have to choose only the essentials." The essentials. As if 43 years of marriage, 35 years of raising a son, 65 years of life could be reduced to what fit in 3 cardboard boxes. I stood staring at those empty boxes, as if they were coffins waiting to be filled. I couldn't sleep that night. I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and walked through the house, touching the walls, the door frames, the kitchen handle that Anthony had repaired so many times that I knew every one of its squeaks. I opened the closet in our bedroom and buried my face in Anthony's clothes that still hung there, searching for his scent. But after 2 years, only the aroma of mothballs and dead time remained. The boxes were still in the hallway when morning broke. I avoided them for 3 days until Veronica returned and asked with that poisonous sweetness she had perfected. "Have you started packing, Grace?" The director of Vista Hermosa called me yesterday. They have a room available with a garden view. It's perfect for you, but they can't reserve it for long. There's a waiting list. Waiting list. As if it were a privilege, an opportunity I couldn't waste. As if other old women were fighting for the right to leave their homes, their lives, their memories, to go die in a small room with a view of a garden that would never be theirs. I started noticing other things, small invasion that maybe I had overlooked before, or justified as family concern. Veronica had changed the lock on the front door without telling me. One day I arrived from the grocery store, and my key no longer worked. I had to ring the doorbell of my own house and wait for Robert, who was inside installing something in the guest room, to come and open for me. "It's for security, Mum. This lock is more modern, harder to break into." He gave me a copy of the new key, but when I checked it that night, I discovered they had made 3 copies. One for me, one for Robert, one for Veronica. My house now had 3 owners, even though only one paid the property taxes. Things started to disappear. First, it was the porcelain vase that Anthony had given me on our 20th anniversary. It had been on the mantelpiece for years, and one day it simply wasn't there anymore. When I asked, Veronica said it had broken while she was cleaning, and that she had thrown away the pieces so I wouldn't hurt myself. "I'm so sorry, mother-in-law. It was so fragile. Anyway, at Vista Hermosa you won't be able to have things like that. It's better to lighten the load now." Then the photographs from Anthony's and my wedding that were in silver frames on the dining room cabinet disappeared. Veronica said she had taken them to be reframed because they looked old and damaged. She never brought them back. When I insisted, she showed me digitized photos on her phone and told me it was better that way, more modern, that physical images took up space and collected dust. My mother's jewelry, which I kept in a wooden box in the bottom drawer of my dresser, became another battleground. Veronica discovered it one afternoon when I was in the bathroom. When I came out, she was sitting on my bed with the box open, touching each piece with her perfectly manicured fingers. "This is worth money, Grace. You should put it in a safety deposit box at the bank. It's not safe here. Anyone could break in and rob you." I tried to take the box from her, but she moved it away with a gentle, almost maternal motion. "Let me take it. I'll keep it in my safety deposit box until you're settled at Vista Hermosa. You won't be able to have jewelry there. It could get lost or someone could take it from you. You know how those places are." "You don't know how those places are," I wanted to scream. "Neither of us knows because I've never been to one and you will never have to be." But I didn't scream. I just watched her take the wooden box with the few valuable things I had left from my mother, the only tangible things that connected me to the woman who raised me, who taught me to cook, who held my hand when Robert was born. Money became another problem. I received a small pension every month, $300 that barely covered food and utilities, but it was mine. It was my independence. Veronica suggested it would be easier if that money were deposited directly into an account she would manage. "That way you don't have to go to the bank, Grace. At your age, walking all the way there is dangerous. I'll take care of paying your bills and give you cash when you need it." When I need it, not when I want it. When she decided I needed it. Robert agreed, of course. Robert always agreed with whatever his wife said. I signed the bank papers because Veronica explained with infinite patience that it was the most logical, most practical thing to do, that she was doing me a favor by relieving me of that responsibility. The first month, I received $50 in cash. "For your personal expenses," Veronica said. "The rest I used to pay the electricity and water." I didn't ask what had happened to the other $200. I was afraid of the answer. The food changed too. Veronica started doing the grocery shopping for me, bringing bags with products I hadn't asked for, expensive brands that she preferred, organic food that cost double and tasted like cardboard. When I told her I preferred to go to the corner market myself, where I had known the vendors for 20 years, she looked at me like I was a stubborn child. That market is dirty, Grace. The food there doesn't have quality controls. Do you want to get sick? I'll take care of it. Don't worry. Don't worry. Those two words became the motto of my new life. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the food. Don't worry about the decisions. Don't worry about anything, because you are no longer capable of worrying about yourself. One afternoon, I found Veronica in the room that had been Robert's when he was a child. That room I kept exactly as he left it when he went to college, with his posters on the walls and his football trophies on the shelves. She was throwing things into black garbage bags, quick, efficient movements, without sentimentality. This is just junk, Grace. Robert won't want any of this. It's better to throw it away now. I tried to stop her, but she continued, relentless, emptying the drawers, ripping down the posters, erasing my son's childhood as if it were a mistake that needed to be corrected. When she finished, the room was just an empty space with bare walls and dust floating in the sunbeams that came through the window. We could rent out this room, she said, tying the bags. $300 a month, easily. It would help with the house expenses until we sell it. Until we sell it. It was no longer if we sold it. It was until, when, soon. The future was already decided, and I was just an obstacle delaying the inevitable. Robert came less. When he came, he stayed a short time, always in a hurry, always with excuses. Work, meetings, commitments. He stopped eating my food, saying he was watching his diet on a doctor's recommendation. He stopped staying for coffee in the afternoons as we used to, when we could still talk without Veronica present, dictating the conversation. I realized I was losing my son in the same way I was losing my house. Little by little, piece by piece, conversation by conversation, until only the shell of something that was once real remained. The day I found Veronica going through Anthony's documents in his study was the day something inside me broke in a way that had no repair. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and she hadn't announced she was coming. I was in the yard trying to save the roses Anthony had planted years ago. Those roses that were now growing wild and disheveled because my hands no longer had the strength to prune them correctly. I entered through the kitchen door to get water and heard noise in the study. That room that had been Anthony's sanctuary, where he spent his afternoons reading and organizing his things. That room I had kept closed since his death, because opening that door was like opening a wound that never completely healed. The door was wide open. Veronica was sitting at Anthony's desk, with drawers open around her, papers scattered on the wooden surface, old documents piled on the floor. She was wearing white cotton gloves, as if she were handling museum artifacts. And she had an expression of absolute concentration as she reviewed every paper, every photograph, every yellowed receipt. She didn't hear me come in. She was too focused on what she was doing. I watched her from the doorway, my heart beating so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. I saw her open the envelope where Anthony kept the deed to the house, how she read every page with those calculating eyes that had perfected the art of finding value in everything. "What are you doing?" My voice came out louder than I intended. Veronica looked up without being startled, without guilt, as if she had every right in the world to be there, invading the most private space of my life. "Oh, Grace, I was looking for the house documents. We need to have everything in order for when you start the selling process." She took off the gloves with slow movements and left them on the desk. She looked at me with that exaggerated patience that people use when speaking to someone they consider mentally inferior. "How did you get in?" "I have a key, mother-in-law. Robert gave me his copy." It's important that we can enter in case of emergency. What if you fall and can't get to the door? Emergency. Everything with her was emergency, prevention, security. Logical reasons to justify every invasion, every violation of my privacy, every piece of autonomy she ripped away with her perfectly manicured hands. I walked toward the desk. My legs were shaking, but I forced myself to stand firm. I took the house deed from her hands. The paper felt fragile between my fingers, as if it would disintegrate if I squeezed too hard. No one gave you permission to go through these things. Veronica sighed, one of those long, suffering sighs that mothers use when their children misbehave, and they have to be patient. Grace, I understand this is difficult for you. I get it. But someone has to take care of these things. You can't keep living in the past. Anthony is gone, and you need help managing all this. All this. My life reduced to paperwork that needed to be managed, organized, filed, sold. I stood there holding the deed against my chest as if it were a shield, feeling the weight of Anthony's silence, his absence so great that it filled the entire room. I want you to leave. The words came out before I could think them. Veronica blinked, genuinely surprised for the first time since I had known her. Excuse me? I want you to leave my house, now. She stood up slowly, smoothing her skirt with her hands, recomposing that mask of professional calm she wore as armor. You're upset. I understand. I'll leave you alone to calm down, and then we can talk calmly. I don't want to talk to you. Not now or later. This is my house, and I want you to leave. For a moment, I saw something in her eyes. It wasn't fear or respect. It was calculation. I saw her measuring the situation, evaluating how much more she could push before I completely broke. She decided to retreat, but only because it was the correct strategic move, not because my request had any real value to her. Very well, Grace, I'm leaving, but the documents will stay here in order, and I'm going to call Robert to come talk to you. I think you need professional help. Professional help. Code for saying I was crazy, that I was senile, that my reaction was not that of a woman defending her space, but that of an old woman losing her mind. She left, leaving the desk a mess. Papers everywhere, drawers open like hungry mouths. I stood there until I heard her car start and drive away down the street. Only then did I allow myself to cry. I cried like I hadn't cried since Anthony's funeral. I cried for the house I was losing, for the son who had become a stranger, for the life I once had that was now slipping through my fingers like sand. I cried sitting in Anthony's chair, surrounded by the papers of our life together, feeling his absence like a black hole that swallowed everything I had been. Robert arrived 2 hours later. He walked in without knocking, using his key, shouting my name with that worried voice that sounded more like annoyance than genuine affection. Mom, what happened? Veronica called me crying, saying you kicked her out of the house. Veronica crying. That image was so fake it was funny, but Robert had bought it completely, with interest included. He was on her side. He was always on her side. She was going through your father's documents without my permission. Mom, she was helping. Someone has to organize all this mess. Look at this place. He gestured widely at the study with disgust, as if his father's life scattered in old papers was trash that needed to be thrown away. This needs to be cleaned up. This needs to be organized. You can't do it alone. I didn't ask for help. But you need it. You just don't see it. This house is falling apart. You can barely take care of yourself. You're still clinging to things that don't matter anymore. They matter to me. Robert ran his hands through his hair, frustrated, exhausted, fed up. I looked at him and understood that he was no longer my child. He was a 40-year-old man who saw his mother as a burden, a problem to be solved, an obstacle between him and the peaceful life Veronica had designed for both of them. "Mum, Veronica and I have been talking. We think it would be better if you went to Vista Hermosa soon, very soon. It's no longer negotiable." Not negotiable. As if it ever had been. As if my opinion had mattered at any point in this process. "This is my house, Robert. And it's a house you can't maintain. The taxes are 3 months overdue. Did you know that? Veronica paid them out of her own money because you didn't even realize you hadn't paid." Lie. The taxes were paid. I had gone to the bank myself 2 months ago and made the payment. I had the receipt stored in my bedroom, in the box where I kept all the important documents. But Robert's face showed absolute conviction. He believed what he was saying. Veronica had shown him something, some fake paper, some manipulated account, and he had believed her without questioning. "I have the receipts." Veronica says those receipts are old, that you're confused about the dates. "Mum, this is exactly what we're talking about. You can't handle these things alone anymore." "I'm not confused." "Look at your face. Look at your face in a mirror. You have bruises every 2 weeks. You fall constantly. The other day the neighbor found you disoriented in the yard. See? You can't go on like this." The neighbor, Mr. Thompson, who lived 3 houses down, and who had indeed found me in the yard one afternoon when I had gotten dizzy from the heat. It had been a moment, 5 minutes of weakness, and now it became evidence of my mental incapacity. I stayed quiet because I understood something terrible and definitive. It didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter how much I defended myself. Robert had already made his decision. Veronica had already won. I was the crazy one, the senile one, the old woman who couldn't take care of herself and needed to be saved from herself. "We already signed the contract with Vista Hermosa. You move in 2 weeks." The words fell like stones into still water. 2 weeks. 14 days. The time I had left in the house where I had lived 30 years, where I had raised my son, where I had loved my husband, where I had been happy before happiness became a blurry, painful memory. "I didn't sign anything. We signed it for you. We have legal power. Do you remember when you signed those papers 2 months ago? Those gave us the authority to make decisions about your health and well-being." Those papers, those documents that Veronica had pushed toward me one afternoon when I was tired, when she had insisted they were just formalities to expedite procedures in case of a medical emergency. I had signed because I trusted, because they were my family, because I never thought they would use that trust as a weapon against me. Robert approached and put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture intended to be comforting, but it felt like the weight of a gravestone. "It's for your own good, Mom. You'll see that you'll be better off at Vista Hermosa. You'll make friends, you'll have activities. You won't have to worry about anything. Veronica and I will come visit you every week." Every week. Promises that would evaporate in a month, in 2, until visits would be once a month, then every 2 months, then only on Christmas if they had time between all their other obligations. He left me in Anthony's study, surrounded by the remnants of our life together. I sat down on the floor, among the papers, and for the first time since all this began, I didn't cry. Something inside me hardened, solidified like cold cement. The pain transformed into something different. Clarity. I understood that if I didn't do something, if I didn't act, in 2 weeks I would be in a small room that smelled of disinfectant, eating bland cafeteria food, waiting for visits that would never come while my house was sold and my life turned into money in Veronica's bank account. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake in the darkness of my room, listening to the sounds of the house. Every creak, every sigh of the wind against the windows, every memory trapped in the walls. And as I listened, I began to think, to plan, to prepare. The next morning, I got up before dawn. My hands were no longer shaking. My mind was clearer than it had been in months, maybe years. Fear had transformed into something more useful, more sharp. Determination. I started with the obvious, my cell phone. That device Robert had given me last year, saying it was important for me to be connected, to be able to communicate in case of emergency. He never really taught me how to use it, just the basics. But I had learned alone during sleepless nights, exploring every function with the patience of a craftswoman. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee cooling in my hands and opened the messaging app. All the messages between Robert and Veronica were there. He never knew I knew how to access that information, because he never asked me how much I understood about technology. To them, I was an old woman who could barely turn on the television. I read for 2 hours. Every message was a stab, but the stabs no longer made me retreat. They made me stronger. I saw conversations about the sale of my house with real estate agents. Messages where they calculated how much money they would get, how they would divide it, what they would do with the profits. Veronica wanted to remodel her kitchen. Robert wanted to trade in his car. I found messages where they discussed how to manage me, strategies to convince me, to pressure me, to make me sign. Veronica wrote things like, "It has to look like her decision, or we can't be too direct. She gets stubborn." Robert responded with, "Don't worry. She's almost convinced, or give her a few more days. She'll get tired of resisting." I took screenshots of every important message. I didn't know exactly what I would use them for, but I knew I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining it, that all this was real, calculated, and cruel. Then I went to Anthony's study. The papers were still scattered where Veronica had left them, but now I looked at them with different eyes. I looked for the house deed and photographed it too. I looked for Anthony's will, that document he had had a lawyer review 6 months before he died. I read the whole thing for the first time. Anthony had left me everything. The house, the bank accounts, everything was in my name. There was no clause that gave Robert rights to the property while I was alive. Veronica knew it. That's why she needed me to sign. That's why she needed the power of attorney. That's why she needed to convince me that selling was my idea. I photographed the will. I photographed the tax payment receipts, the ones I supposedly hadn't paid. They were all there, organized chronologically, including the payment from 2 months ago. Veronica had lied. Robert had believed the lie without checking. I stored all the important documents in a cloth bag that I hid in the back of my closet, behind old shoeboxes that no one would check. I left copies in their place, but the originals were safe now. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I went to the corner hardware store, the one where Mr. Johnson had known me for 20 years. I asked him to change the lock on my bedroom door. I didn't give him explanations, and he didn't ask. He just nodded with that silent understanding of people who have lived long enough to know that some things don't need words. While Mr. Johnson worked on the door, I organized my room. I brought in all the remaining valuables in the house. The photographs Veronica hadn't taken. The documents, the only piece of my mother's jewelry I had left. A gold bracelet that had been hidden in an empty cookie tin in the kitchen. 2 days later, Veronica knocked on my door at 9 o'clock in the morning. She came in with her key, but stopped in the hallway when she saw that my bedroom door had a new lock. "What is this, Grace?" Her voice had lost all pretense of sweetness. It was cold, direct, annoyed. "Security. Like you said, it's important to feel safe in your own home." Veronica walked toward my door and tried to turn the handle. Locked. She looked at me with those calculating eyes, re-evaluating the situation, re-evaluating my capacity for resistance. I need to get in there. There are things to pack. There is nothing to pack yet. Grace, don't start this. We already talked. You're moving in less than 2 weeks. I remained silent, holding her gaze. For the first time in months, I didn't look away first. She blinked, and in that blink, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Uncertainty. Give me the key to that door. No. The word came out firm, without tremor, without apology. Veronica took a step toward me, and for a moment I thought she would lose control, that the mask of civility would fall completely. But she restrained herself. She still needed to maintain appearances. I'm going to call Robert. Call him. She took out her phone and dialed without taking her eyes off me. I heard the ringtone once, twice, 3 times, until it went to voicemail. Robert was in a meeting. He was always in a meeting when it came to dealing with me. Veronica put the phone away. She took a deep breath, recomposing the mask. This changes nothing. You're still going to move, with or without your cooperation. We'll see. She left, slamming the door, which made the window frames vibrate. I stayed in the hallway, looking at the closed door, feeling my heart beating strongly but without fear. Only strength, only decision, only the certainty that I had crossed a line and there was no going back. That night, I slept with my bedroom door locked for the first time in 30 years, and I slept well, deep, peaceful, as I hadn't slept since Anthony closed his eyes forever. The following days were a silent war. Veronica came every morning, and every morning she was met with closed doors, with my calm but firm refusal, with a version of me she didn't know and didn't know how to handle. I was no longer the docile mother-in-law who agreed to everything, who signed what was put in front of her, who let others make decisions about her life. Robert finally appeared on the 4th day. He arrived in the afternoon, after work, with that tired look of men who would rather be anywhere but where they are. He knocked on the door with his knuckles, softly, almost apologizing for existing. "Mom, open up. We need to talk." I opened the door but didn't step aside to let him in. I stood in the doorway, occupying the space, marking territory. He noticed the change immediately. I saw the confusion in his eyes, that moment of recalibration when you realize the rules of the game have changed without anyone telling you. Veronica says you put a lock on your room. That's right. Why? Because it's my room in my house, and I can put whatever locks I want on it. Robert sighed. That sigh I knew so well, the one he used when he was a child, and I didn't give him permission for something he considered unfair. "Mum, this is getting out of hand. You're complicating everything unnecessarily." "I'm not complicating anything. I'm protecting what's mine." "Protecting it from whom? We're your family." "Then act like family, not like vultures waiting for me to die." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't take them back. Robert paled. For a second, I saw genuine pain in his face, but it vanished quickly, replaced by that automatic defense guilt activates when it doesn't want to be recognized. "That's unfair. Everything we're doing is for your good. Going through your father's documents without my permission is for my good. Taking my mother's jewelry is for my good. Lying about the taxes I did pay is for my good." Robert opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I had disarmed him. He didn't know that I knew about the lies, about the manipulations, about the messages he exchanged with Veronica, planning how to manage me as if I were a corporate problem to solve. "Mom, the taxes are overdue. Veronica showed me the bank statements. And I have the payment receipts. They are in my room, locked up, where no one can conveniently make them disappear. That doesn't make sense. Why would we do something like that? I don't know, Robert. Why would you? He stayed silent. I saw his mind working, trying to find an explanation that wouldn't make him look like the man who had allowed his wife to abuse his mother. He found none. You still have to move to Vista Hermosa. Everything is already arranged. I'm not going. It's not negotiable. Everything is negotiable when it comes to my life. Mum, please don't make this more difficult than it already is. Difficult for whom, Robert? For you or for me? Because for me, losing my house, my autonomy, my dignity, that is difficult. Signing papers in an office and collecting a check doesn't seem so difficult. I watched him shrink with every word. Part of me wanted to hug him, tell him everything would be okay, protect him as I had done when he was a child, and the world seemed too big and scary. But that part of me was tired. I had protected and forgiven and yielded for too long. I'm not moving. Cancel the contract with Vista Hermosa. I can't do that. We already paid the deposit. $500, non-refundable. $500 that came out of my pension, surely. $500 of my money used to buy my prison. Then lose the deposit. It's not my problem. Robert ran his hands over his face, frustrated, defeated. For a moment I thought he would give up, accept my decision, finally see me as something more than an obstacle. But then he took out his phone and dialed. He put it on speaker. Veronica answered on the second ring, her voice coming out clear and controlled from the small device. What happened? She's being difficult. She won't cooperate. He spoke about me as if I weren't there, as if I were a defective object that wasn't working as it should. We knew this could happen. We proceed with Plan B. Robert nodded, even though she couldn't see him. He hung up and looked at me with something that might have been pity, or might have been relief that someone else was making the difficult decisions. Veronica is going to come with a doctor tomorrow. They are going to do an evaluation of your mental state. An evaluation. Code for a declaration of incapacity. Code for taking away all legal authority over myself. Code for officially turning me into an invalid who needs guardians to make decisions for her. I'm not talking to any doctor. You don't have to. The doctor will talk to us. They'll review the history of your falls, your confusions, your erratic behaviors. We already have enough documentation. Documentation. The falls that anyone of 65 has. The supposed confusions that were Veronica's lies. The erratic behaviors that consisted of refusing to be stripped of my home. That's false, and you know it. The doctor will decide that, not me. He left without saying goodbye, leaving me at the door with the weight of what had just happened falling on my shoulders like wet cement. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling my legs tremble for the first time in days. I understood that I had underestimated how far they were willing to go. I thought that confronting them firmly would be enough, that seeing me strong would make them retreat. But I wasn't dealing with reasonable people. I was dealing with people who had invested time, money, and effort in a plan, and they weren't going to let a stubborn old woman ruin their projects. That night I called Mr. Thompson, my neighbour. He answered with that smoker's gruff voice he'd had since I met him. Grace, is everything okay? No, Tom. Everything is not okay. I need a favour. I explained the situation to him. Not all the details, just what was necessary. That my family was trying to force me to sell the house, that they were coming with a doctor, that I needed a witness that I was in my right mind. Tom listened in silence, and when I finished, his answer was simple. I'll be there tomorrow. I also called the only person I thought could help me, Frank, the lawyer who had helped Anthony with the will. His number was still in the old address book I kept in the kitchen drawer. A secretary answered, but when I said my name, Frank took the call immediately. "Mrs. Morrison, it's good to hear from you. How can I help you?" I told him everything. The manipulations, the lies, the attempt to declare me incapacitated. I spoke quickly, afraid he would lose patience or decide it was too much trouble for a client who probably couldn't pay him much. "Do you have proof of what you're telling me?" "I have messages, photographs of documents, receipts." "Good. That's very good. Listen to me, Mrs. Morrison. Don't talk to that doctor tomorrow. Don't say anything that can be used against you. I'm going to be there too. They can't do an evaluation without your consent and without a court order." "Can you do that? Can you come?" "I can and I will. Anthony was my friend as well as my client. I'm not going to allow them to abuse his widow." I hung up feeling something akin to hope for the first time in weeks. I was not alone. I had allies. I had proof. I had right on my side. The next morning I got up early. I put on my best clothes, the ones I wore for important occasions. I carefully did my hair. I put on the pearl earrings Anthony had given me. I put on just enough makeup to cover the tiredness, but not so much as to look like I was trying to hide something. When Veronica arrived with Robert and a man in a grey suit who must have been the doctor, I was sitting in the living room with Tom next to me and Frank standing by the window, reviewing documents in his briefcase. Veronica's face was a study. Surprise, then calculation, then anger barely contained beneath a professional smile. "Grace, I didn't know we would have more guests." Frank introduced himself with that quiet authority that good lawyers have, extending his hand to the doctor, completely ignoring Veronica. "Frank Harrison, attorney for Mrs. Morrison. Are you the professional who came to do an unauthorized evaluation of my client?" The doctor, a man of about 50, with a look of not wanting to be there, looked at Veronica for instructions. "I hired Dr. Jones to evaluate my mother-in-law's mental capacity. It's a necessary evaluation given the circumstances." "What circumstances exactly?" "Mrs. Morrison is in her home, lucid, well-presented, accompanied by her lawyer and a witness. I see no emergency that justifies a forced evaluation." Robert tried to intervene, his voice sounding weak compared to Frank's. "My mother has had several episodes, falls, confusion. We're worried." Frank took a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. "I have here Mrs. Morrison's medical history, obtained with her authorization. There is no diagnosis of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any condition that affects her mental capacity. The falls you mention are normal for her age, and none have resulted in hospitalization or prolonged treatment." Veronica sat down on the armchair without being invited, crossing her legs, recomposing her strategy on the fly. "We also have concerns about her ability to manage her finances. The house taxes are overdue." Frank smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "The taxes are paid and up to date. I have here certified copies of all the payments. Would you like to review them, Dr. Jones?" The doctor raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I only came to do an evaluation if the patient consented. Clearly, this is a complex family matter that does not require my services." He left quickly, escaping a situation that had become awkward and potentially problematic for him. Veronica watched him go, with eyes that could have started a fire. The silence after the doctor left was so dense you could almost touch it. Veronica was still sitting in Anthony's armchair, her perfect posture beginning to crack at the edges. Robert was standing by the door, as if calculating the shortest distance to escape. Frank remained next to me, motionless, waiting. Veronica spoke first. Her voice had lost all pretense of sweetness. "This doesn't end here, Grace. You know it doesn't end here." "You're right. It doesn't end here. It ends with you out of my house and out of my life until you can treat me with the respect I deserve. Robert finally found his voice, though it was broken. Mom, please, we're family. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't try to declare their mother incompetent to take her house. Veronica stood up abruptly, the control finally breaking. Take your house. All we've done is try to help you. You are a stubborn old woman who doesn't understand what's best for her. There it was, the truth finally coming out unfiltered, unmasked. Frank stepped forward, his voice sharp as glass. Ma'am, I suggest you measure your words. Everything you say right now is being witnessed and can be used legally. Veronica looked at me with an hatred so pure that for a moment I thought she would hit me. But she controlled herself, grabbed her bag, and walked toward the door. Let's go, Robert. Robert didn't move. He stood there, looking at me with eyes I no longer recognized. He was no longer the child I had raised, who had slept in my arms, whose scraped knees and broken hearts I had healed. He was a stranger trapped between two worlds, unable to choose. Robert, I said let's go. Veronica's voice was an order, not a request. He followed her as he always did, like an obedient dog who has forgotten that he was once free. Before crossing the door, Robert turned to me one last time. This isn't what I wanted, Mum. You have to believe me. Then you should have wanted something different. They left. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house like a final shot. Tom placed a hand on my shoulder, a simple gesture of solidarity. Frank gathered his documents with efficient movements. Mrs. Morrison, I need you to understand something. This is probably going to get worse before it gets better. Your daughter-in-law doesn't seem like the type of person who accepts defeat easily. I know. Good. Then be prepared. I recommend you change all the locks on the house, not just your room. Document any attempt at contact or intimidation. And consider installing security cameras, if your budget allows. I don't have much money, I admitted, feeling shame for the first time since all this began. Frank closed his briefcase and looked at me with kind eyes. Anthony helped me when I was starting my career and couldn't afford a corporate lawyer. I owe him this. Don't worry about my fees for now. We'll worry about that when we are sure your house and your autonomy are protected. I didn't know what to say. The words got stuck in my throat along with tears I refused to shed in front of them. Tom filled the silence. I have an old security camera in my garage. My son installed it years ago and then bought a new one. It works perfectly. I'll bring it over this afternoon. The two men left me alone in my house, which suddenly felt bigger and quieter than it had been in a long time. I sat on the sofa and for the first time allowed the fatigue to completely wash over me. I had won this battle. But Frank was right. Veronica would not give up so easily. I knew people like her. I had seen them on soap operas, in stories that other women told at the market, in newspaper articles about families destroyed by inheritance and property. They wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted or until they could no longer keep trying. That afternoon, Tom brought the camera. We installed it pointing toward the front door, with a clear view of anyone who approached. It wasn't a sophisticated system, but it was enough. He showed me how to review the recordings on my phone with infinite patience, repeating the instructions until I memorized them. 2 days later, Robert came back. Alone, without Veronica. He knocked on the door like a stranger asking permission. I let him in but didn't invite him to sit down. I came to apologize. The words sounded rehearsed, as if he had practiced them in front of the mirror. I crossed my arms and waited for him to continue. I didn't realize what was happening. Veronica told me things, and I believed her because she's my wife. Because I trust her. But I've been thinking about everything, and you're right. Things got out of hand. Got out of hand. As if it had been an accident, something that simply happened without anyone consciously deciding to hurt, manipulate, steal. And what changed, Robert? Why are you coming with apologies now? Veronica is furious. She says she doesn't want anything more to do with you, that if you want to stay in this house until it falls on you, it's your problem. I can't live like this, Mum. I can't live knowing my mother hates me. I don't hate you, I said. And it was true. Hatred requires energy that I no longer had. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you either. And without trust, there is no family. Tell me what to do to fix it. I really looked at him for the first time in months. I saw the lines of worry around his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped under the weight of a life he had built on pleasing others. I saw the boy he had been and the man he had become, and felt a deep sadness for the distance between them. You can't fix this with words, Robert. It's fixed with actions, with time, with genuine respect, not with empty promises when it suits you. He nodded, defeated. He left without trying to hug me, without attempting any more apologies, and I was left wondering if someday we could find our way back to each other, or if some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. 3 weeks passed without news from them. 3 weeks of silence that felt like the eye of the hurricane, that deceptive calm before the storm returns with more force. I got used to checking the security camera every morning, expecting to see Veronica or Robert approaching the door, but the screen always showed the same thing. The empty lawn, the quiet street, no one. The silence should have brought me peace, but instead it brought something heavier. Loneliness. The house I had defended so fiercely now felt too big for one person. The empty rooms echoed with conversations that would no longer take place, with laughter that had dried up like flowers without water. Tom came every 2 days to have coffee with me. He never stayed long, just long enough to make sure I was okay, that I was eating, that I hadn't fallen or hurt myself. It was a simple, unpretentious kindness that made me cry when he left and I was alone again. Nights were the worst. I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning hearing noises that were probably just the house settling, but that my mind turned into threats. Veronica forcing a window, Robert using a key I didn't know he had. Dr. Jones returning with papers that would declare me incompetent no matter what Frank said. I started cooking again, not because I was hungry, but because I needed to fill the time with something that made sense. I made the recipes Anthony loved, the beef stew I made him on Sundays, the saffron rice he asked for on special occasions. I cooked large portions as if there was still someone else at the table, and then stored the leftovers in containers that accumulated in the refrigerator until they spoiled, and I had to throw them away. One afternoon, while peeling potatoes in the kitchen, I heard the doorbell. My heart immediately sped up. I checked the camera on my phone before approaching the door. It wasn't Robert or Veronica. It was a young girl, maybe 16 or 17 years old, with long hair pulled back into a ponytail and a backpack hanging from one shoulder. It took me a moment to recognize her. Lily, my granddaughter, Robert and Veronica's daughter, whom I had barely seen in the last 2 years, because there was always an excuse not to bring her to visit me. She had homework, she had school activities, she wasn't feeling well. I opened the door slowly, preparing myself for anything. Lily looked at me with eyes that were exactly like Robert's when he was a child, before life made him a coward. "Hi, Grandma." Her voice cracked on the last syllable. Before I could say anything, she rushed toward me and hugged me with a strength I didn't expect from someone so thin. I felt her shoulders shaking, struggling to contain sobs that fought to escape. "Come in, my love, come in." I guided her to the living room, and we sat on the sofa, she still clinging to me as if she feared I would kick her out. I stroked her hair and waited until she could speak. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry for everything they did to you." The words came out gaspingly, through tears that finally flowed uncontrollably. I handed her a tissue and waited until she calmed down enough to continue. "I knew what they were doing. I heard Mum talking on the phone about selling your house. I heard her tell Dad that they had to hurry before you changed your mind. I heard when she said that if you didn't cooperate, they were going to declare you incompetent. Why didn't you say anything?" My voice came out harsher than I intended. Lily flinched, as if I had hit her. "I was scared. Mum is... She can be really cruel when things don't go her way. I tried to talk to Dad once, tell him that what they were doing was wrong, but he told me I didn't understand adult things and to stay out of it." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, preparing for what came next. "But I can't stay quiet anymore. Not after what happened yesterday." "What happened yesterday?" "Mum was talking to a friend of hers who's a real estate agent. I heard them from my room. Mum was telling her that it was only a matter of time before they got the house, that you're old and would eventually make a mistake they could use against you. She said that when you died, which she said would be soon, Dad would inherit everything, and then they could do whatever they wanted." The casual way Lily repeated those words, the coldness with which Veronica had spoken of my death, as if it were just a temporary inconvenience, hit me like a punch to the stomach. Lily took her phone out of her backpack and showed it to me. On the screen was an audio file. I recorded everything, every conversation I've heard in the last 3 weeks. I have like 12 recordings where Mum talks about you, about the house, about how to manipulate Dad to go through with the plan. "Why did you record all that?" "Because I needed proof. I needed something to make me feel like I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining how horrible all this was. And I needed something to give to you, so you could defend yourself." My granddaughter. This 16-year-old girl had done what her father didn't have the courage to do. She had chosen right over convenient. She had risked the peace of her home to protect someone she barely saw. "Does your mum know you're here?" "No. She thinks I'm at a friend's house studying. If she finds out I came to see you, there's going to be a war." Tears fell down her cheeks again. "But I had to come. I had to tell you I'm sorry, that not everyone in the family is like her. And I had to give you this." She connected her phone to my laptop, that old laptop Anthony had given me years ago that I barely used. She helped me transfer all the audio files to my computer. Then she also emailed them to Frank, using the address I had saved on my phone. When we finished, Lily looked at me with eyes that seemed much older than they should be at her age. "You hate me, Grandma, for not saying anything sooner." I hugged her again, squeezing tight, trying to convey everything words couldn't express with that gesture. "I don't hate you, my love. You're a child. It's not your responsibility to protect me from your parents. But thank you. Thank you for being brave when no one else was." Lily stayed for an hour more. I made her hot chocolate like when she was little and came to visit me. We talked about school, her friends, her dreams of studying medicine. For a while, the house stopped feeling empty. For a while, I remembered what it was like to have real family. When she left, with promises to return soon, I stayed sitting in the living room listening to the recordings she had left me. Veronica's voice came out clear and cold from the laptop speaker. Every word was a confession. Every sentence was proof of the calculated manipulation. In one of the recordings, Veronica was telling someone on the phone that she had contacted another doctor, one who would be willing to do an unfavorable evaluation if they paid him enough. In another, she talked about convincing the neighbors that I was losing my mind, that they had seen me wandering the street in my pajamas in the middle of the night. Lies, all lies, but said with such conviction that anyone could believe them. The last recording was the most disturbing. Veronica was talking to Robert, her voice soft but poisonous. "You can't keep doubting, Robert. Your mother is an obstacle. As long as she lives and has control over that house, we cannot move forward. We need that money. We need it now." Robert's voice sounded tired, defeated. "I don't want to keep talking about this. She's my mother. And it's a house worth $200,000, Robert. $200,000 that would allow us to pay off our debts, remodel our house, give Lily a better life. Does that mean nothing to you?" "It means something, but my mother means something too. Your mother who doesn't even visit you, who barely speaks to you since you set healthy boundaries. Your mother who is being selfish by clinging to a house she can't maintain. She's not being selfish. It's her house. For now, but not forever. Time is on our side, my love. We just have to be patient." The recording ended there. I stayed staring at the dark screen of the laptop, feeling something that wasn't exactly surprise, because I already knew what they were capable of, but that hurt anyway. Hearing my own son reduce my worth to a selling price, hearing him talk about me as if I were a temporary problem to be solved with patience, that was a different kind of pain. That night I called Frank. I told him about Lily's visit, about the recordings. He listened in silence, and when I finished, his response was direct. "With this, we can get a restraining order against your daughter-in-law if necessary, and if they try to proceed with any legal action against you, these recordings would destroy any case they attempt to build." "And Robert?" "Robert is an accomplice, but the recordings show that Veronica is the driving force. He is weak, not malicious. That doesn't excuse him, but it changes the dynamic." I hung up feeling strangely empty. I had the proof I needed. I had the legal support. I had the truth on my side. But I also had the definitive confirmation that the family I had built with so much love and sacrifice had broken in ways that might never be repaired. I went to sleep that night with my bedroom door locked, the security camera recording, and the phone on the nightstand, ready to call Tom or Frank if something happened. I slept, but it was a restless sleep, filled with dreams where Anthony told me everything would be okay, that he was still watching over me from wherever he was. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning with a clear certainty. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep waiting for the next attack, the next manipulation, the next attempt to snatch what was mine. I had to end this in a definitive way. I had to confront them one last time, not with fear or defense, but with the complete truth and all the consequences that came with it. I sent them a message at 8 o'clock in the morning, simple, direct, emotionless. "Come to the house this afternoon at 4 o'clock, all three of you. We need to talk for the last time." Robert replied first, a simple okay that sounded resigned even over text message. Veronica didn't reply, but I knew she would come. She couldn't resist the opportunity to try to regain control one last time. I spent the day preparing, not physically but mentally. I showered and put on the dress Anthony had bought me for our last anniversary together. That wine-coloured dress, he said, made me look elegant. I carefully did my hair and put on just enough makeup. I wanted to look strong, not vulnerable. I wanted them to see me as the woman I was, not as the victim they had tried to create. Frank arrived at 3 o'clock. He brought his briefcase and a digital recorder that he placed on the coffee table. Tom arrived 15 minutes later, sitting silently in a chair by the window. Both understood what was about to happen without me having to explain it. Exactly at 4 o'clock, I heard Robert's car park in front of the house. I saw them on the security camera, Robert walking slowly, dragging his feet like a man going to his execution. Veronica walked beside him with her head held high, perfectly dressed, perfectly controlled, and between them, Lily, with red eyes from crying. I opened the door before they knocked. The three of them stopped at the threshold when they saw Frank and Tom. Veronica was the first to speak, her voice sharp. I didn't know this would be a formal meeting. It is what it needs to be. I let them in. Robert avoided my gaze. Lily ran to me and hugged me quickly before Veronica shot her a murderous look. They sat on the sofa, all three of them together, like a united family facing a common enemy. I sat across from them with Frank by my side. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Frank broke it. "Mrs. Morrison, whenever you're ready." I took a deep breath and began. "I called you here so you could hear something I think will clear up any confusion about what has been happening these months." I nodded toward Frank. He pressed play on the recorder. Veronica's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "You can't keep doubting, Robert. Your mother is an obstacle. As long as she lives and has control over that house, we cannot move forward." I saw the colour drain from Robert's face. Veronica stiffened, her hands clenching in her lap. The recording continued, every word falling like stones into still water. When it ended, Frank stopped the playback. "I have 11 more recordings like this, all document attempts at manipulation, lies about Mrs. Morrison's mental state, and conspiracy to obtain her property under false pretenses." Veronica found her voice, cold as ice. "Those recordings are illegal. They were made without consent." Frank smiled without humour. "In this state, only one party in the conversation is required to consent to the recording. Lily was part of the conversations in her own home. The recordings are completely legal and admissible in court." Robert finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, I didn't want to." "Didn't want what, Robert? Didn't want to steal my house? Didn't want to declare me incompetent? Didn't want to wait patiently for me to die so you could collect?" "It's not how it sounds." "Then tell me how it is. Explain to me how all this is different from what I heard on those recordings." He couldn't. He stayed silent, looking at his hands as if he could find some non-existent answer there. Veronica hadn't flinched. She was still sitting with that perfect posture, but there was something different in her eyes. She knew she had lost. "What do you want, Grace? Money? An apology? Name your price." "I don't have a price. What I want is for you to leave me alone, to leave my house alone, to stop trying to control my life. We're family. You can't just cut us out of your life. Look at what you've done, and tell me you still deserve to call yourselves my family." Frank took some documents from his briefcase. "I have prepared a restraining order. If Mrs. Morrison signs it, you will not be able to approach this property within 100 feet without her express permission. I have also prepared documents that revoke any legal power previously granted to you." He pushed the papers toward me along with a pen, the same expensive pen that Veronica had used to try to make me sign the sale of my house. I took the pen, feeling its weight, and looked at Robert. "Do you have anything to say before I sign this?" Robert looked up. There were tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mum. I really am. I don't know when everything got out of control. I don't know when I stopped protecting you and started hurting you." The words sounded genuine, but it no longer mattered. The damage was done, the trust destroyed. Apologies don't rebuild what has been broken so deeply. I signed the documents with a steady hand. Each signature felt like closing a door, like ending a chapter that had lasted too long. Lily broke the silence that followed, her voice small but clear. "Can I still visit you, Grandma?" I looked at Veronica, expecting her to protest, to place some condition, but she was defeated. She knew she had no power here. Of course you can, my love. This will always be your house. Veronica stood up abruptly. Let's go. We have nothing more to do here. Robert slowly got up, like a man walking in a dream. He stopped in front of me, opened his mouth to say something, but the words didn't come out. He just nodded, a small, broken gesture, and followed his wife. Lily hugged me tight before she left. I love you, Grandma. I'll be back soon, I promise. I watched them leave from the window. Robert's car drove away down the street until it disappeared. Frank and Tom stayed a little longer, making sure I was okay, that I didn't regret what I had just done. I don't regret it, I told them. And it was true. When they finally left and I was alone in the house, the silence was different. It wasn't the heavy silence of loneliness, but something lighter. Peace. For the first time in months, I felt real peace. I walked through every room of the house, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs that were still hanging where they had always been. This was my house, mine, and no one would ever take it from me. The first few days after the confrontation were strange. I woke up expecting to hear the doorbell, expecting to see Robert's car on the street, expecting some more attempt by Veronica to reclaim what she thought belonged to her. But nothing happened. The silence held, dense but calm, like freshly fallen snow that no one dares to step on. Frank called every 2 days to verify that everything was in order. The restraining order was in effect. There had been no violations, no attempts at contact. Veronica and Robert seemed to have finally accepted that they had lost. Lily came to visit me the following Saturday. She came alone, by bus, with a bag full of ingredients to bake cookies like we did when she was little. We didn't talk about her parents while we mixed the flour and sugar. We just enjoyed being together, laughing when we burned the first batch and celebrating when the second came out perfect. Before she left, while packing the leftover cookies to take home, she told me something she had been holding back. Dad is sleeping in the guest room. I heard Mum yelling last night that it was his fault everything went wrong, that if he had been firmer with you, none of this would have happened. And what did your dad say? Nothing. He never says anything. He just stood there while she screamed. I felt something similar to pity, but not exactly that. Robert had made his choices. Now he was living with the consequences, and those consequences included a wife who blamed him for her own failure. Weeks turned into months. Fall arrived with its golden leaves falling in the yard that I had finally started to take care of again. Tom helped me prune Anthony's roses, clean up the neglected areas, and make the space feel alive again. One afternoon, while watering the plants, I saw an unfamiliar car park in front of the house. My heart sped up for a moment until I saw who got out. Robert. Just Robert. Without Veronica. He stood on the sidewalk, looking at the house as if it were the first time he had seen it. He walked slowly to the entrance, but stopped before reaching the door, maintaining the distance the restraining order required. I didn't go out immediately. I watched him from the window, seeing him struggling with something internal, seeing his hands open and close at his sides. Finally, I went out to the yard, but stayed on the porch. You can't be here, Robert. You know you can't. I know. I just wanted to see you from the street, see that you were okay. I am fine. We stood like that, separated by 30 feet of lawn and an abyss of broken trust. I'm divorcing Veronica. The words fell flat, without drama. I didn't answer. I just waited for him to continue. I should have done it a long time ago. I should have listened to you, believed you, defended you. But I didn't, and now I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know that I'm sorry. I truly am, Mum. And because I need you to know that I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. Part of me wanted to run to him, hug him, tell him everything would be okay. But that part was tired of saving people who didn't want to save themselves. Forgiveness is not something you give because someone asks for it. It's something that comes when it comes, if it comes at all. Robert nodded, accepting those words as the sentence they were. Can I at least know if someday you might consider letting me back into your life? Not now, I understand. But someday. I don't know, Robert. Honestly, I don't know. It's more than I deserve to hear. He turned to leave, but before getting into the car, he turned back one last time. Lily told me you go to her soccer games. Thank you for that. Thank you for not punishing her for my mistakes. She's not to blame for anything. She is the only good thing that came out of all this. He left without saying more. I watched him drive away and felt something release in my chest, something that had been tight for months. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of something. The possibility that maybe, with a lot of time and work, we could find some way to coexist. The following months, I found a new rhythm in my life. Mornings I spent in the yard, afternoons reading the books Anthony had left in his study that I had never had time to read. Tom came over for dinner 2 times a week, bringing cheap wine and stories about his own children, who rarely visited him. Lily came every Saturday. Sometimes she brought friends, filling the house with young laughter and music I didn't understand, but enjoyed listening to. She taught me how to better use my phone, to watch videos online, to connect with a world I had been ignoring for fear of not understanding it. One day, 6 months after the confrontation, Frank called me with news. Robert's divorce was finalized yesterday. Veronica didn't fight. She took what she could and left. I thought you would want to know. And Robert? He's living in a small apartment near work. Lily spends weekends with him. From what she tells me, he's trying to rebuild his relationship with his daughter. I was happy for Lily. She deserved to have her father present, even if it was a late, broken version of what he should have always been. Spring arrived, and with it came new flowers in the yard. Anthony's roses bloomed more beautifully than ever, as if they had been waiting for this moment of peace to show their true beauty. One afternoon, while cutting roses to put in a vase, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting to see Tom or Lily. It was Robert. He stopped at the appropriate distance, respecting the boundaries I had set. Frank told me I could come if I kept my distance. I just wanted to bring you this. He held out an envelope. I took it without getting too close. Inside was a check for $10,000. It's all the money Veronica took from your pension during those months. I recovered it as part of the divorce settlement. It's yours. It was always yours. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. It's the least I can do. I put the envelope in the pocket of my apron. We stood in silence, the blooming yard between us. Can I ask you something, Mum? Ask. Do you think someday you might be able to forgive me? I really looked at him, seeing the man he had become. He was no longer the child I raised, nor the stranger who had tried to steal my house. He was something in between, something broken trying to mend itself. I don't know, Robert, but I think I'm starting to understand that forgiveness is not a single moment. It's something you build day by day, with actions, not with words. I can live with that. Then maybe there is hope. He left without trying to hug me, without asking for more than I could give. And I returned to my roses, feeling the sun on my face and the earth beneath my feet. That night, sitting on the living room sofa with a cup of hot tea in my hands, I looked around my house. This house that I had defended, that I had fought to keep, that I had been about to lose. The walls still needed paint. The roof still had some leaks. The yard would never be perfect again. But it was mine, and I was free. And that freedom, with all its pain and its loneliness and its uncertainty, was worth more than any false peace built on submission. Lily arrived later that night with pizza and a movie she wanted us to watch together. We sat on the sofa, sharing the food and laughing at the jokes I didn't always understand, but enjoyed anyway. When she left, leaving me with a kiss on the cheek and promises to return soon, I stayed sitting in the darkness of the living room, listening to the familiar sounds of the house. The kitchen clock ticking the hours, the wind whispering against the windows, the creak of the old beams that had seen so much, that had held so much. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I felt Anthony's presence. Not literally, not as a ghost, but as a warm memory, as the certainty that I had loved and been loved, that I had built something real that no one could take from me, no matter how hard they tried. I opened my eyes and looked at my house, my home, my life. It wasn't perfect. It was marked by scars and losses, by battles won and relationships broken. But it was mine, and I was still here, standing, breathing, living, and that was enough.